104.5 The Team, your home for New York sports. We are joined by our man Field Yates, the insider extraordinaire from ESPN. Field, we got a lot of Giants fans here in the capital region, and they're basically lined up on the Twin Bridges right now. What are their issues? Is there any way that they turn this around in your eyes?
Here's the reason, or here's the way they can turn around, is the Giants are still playing like kick-butt defense. Like, they've been outstanding defensively. Look at the two games, and they allowed 24 points in the game against the Lions, but let's be honest. I mean, 7 of those came on special teams. They did an excellent job containing the Lions for the most part offensively. You know, in the second half, the Lions basically ran the football some more. But you know, in the first game, they allowed just 1 touchdown against the Dallas Cowboys. So you know, I'm not particularly concerned about the Giants' defense right now. So that, to me, is where the optimism stems from with this team.
All right, optimism's great, but how do we get points on the board, okay? They can't score over 20 points. How are they getting into the end zone?
Let me ask you guys a question, and be honest with me here. How would you guys assess your own pass protection skills?
Goz's are pretty good. He was an offensive lineman in college.
I'd say Division
Good
3.
enough.
Division 3.
Okay. You might be worth it for the Giants right now if you can play left tackle. I mean, it's not. I don't like to overthink things when they do not need to be overthought. The offensive line is a major concern. Eric Flowers looks like a turnstile right now. And I know that no one wants to put this on one player internally, but the reality is the Giants are vulnerable along the offensive line, certainly at the left tackle spot. And, you know, it just takes one piece of the puzzle to be out of sync, and all of a sudden your harmony on offense can really go to shreds. You looked at what happened on Sunday night, for example, in that game between the Falcons and the Packers, right? The Packers are down their 2 starting offensive tackles, David Bakhtiari and also Brian Bulaga. You're playing with backup offensive linemen. Aaron Rodgers looked, not mortal, but he looked a little more regular for much of that game. So I think at the end of the day, it is, it's just you have to have stability along the offensive line for this offense to get any better.
Field Yates with us. So, Field, Ben McAdoo, the head coach, says the buck stops here, but then turns and has criticisms for Eli. That's led some Giants fans in this area to wonder if Eli's, in his final game days, as a talent evaluator, what do you see when you look at Eli Manning?
Well, first of all, I have no problem with Ben McAdoo saying what he said. I don't know if you guys feel differently about it, but what they did, what happened at the end of the half or in that third quarter drive, it's pretty fundamental to get to the line of scrimmage and get your players aligned. And I just want to, I think it's pretty reasonable to expect delay of game penalties to be something that teams go through, or should not go through, I should say, in critical situations. I think that's a very reasonable ask. So I don't have an issue with what Ben McAdoo said about Eli Manning. That being said, I also don't think the end is near here for Eli Manning or by any stretch. I mean, as sort of average as he played through the first 2 games, guys, the opportunity cost is certainly one part of it. Who's the better quarterback that's available to the Giants? And we've seen Eli Manning be streaky frequently throughout his years. I mean, that is what he does. He basically has these stretches where he's awesome, and he has stretches where he's more middle of the pack. And right now he's in one of those middle of the pack stretches.
The Giants aren't the only team that's 0-2 in New York. It's also the New York Jets. They lose a big one to the Oakland Raiders, but we thought that was going to happen. I'm surprised already heading into week 3 we haven't heard the rumors of Christian Hackenberg and when they start starting up the youngster in games. Do you see that rumor starting anytime soon here in the next 2 to 3 weeks?
You know something, guys? I don't think so, and here's why. The Jets are 0-2, and they're going to be really bad this year. But they have not been as bad as I thought they would be, to be honest. And I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but that game against Oakland was competitive through halftime, and it got away from the Jets in the second half. And obviously the game in week 1 was competitive with the Bills for much of it. And as much as the pivot for this Jets franchise is dependent upon the talent that they eventually acquire, it's also about building a little bit of a culture here. You have to build a culture of winning and good habits. And so I understand that Christian Hackenberg, you have to see what you have. And trust me, I've been saying that for a long time now. They have to eventually start Christian Hackenberg. But Josh McCown has actually played fairly well through 2 weeks that I think it's smart to keep riding him out. Now, if things go awry, I understand pulling the plug on Josh McCown and see what you have in Hackenberg and perhaps once again in Bryce Petty. But I think for now you continue to ride the steady hand of Josh McCown and see what you have in development at other spots around the roster, that to me makes the most sense.
Field Yates with us right now on your home for New York Jets football, 104.5 The Team. Field, I got to be selfish for a second. I'm a Raiders fan. You talked about how that offense looked against the Raiders defense. What did that game say about that Raiders defense?
You know something? I was so impressed with the Raiders defense in week 1 that I'm going to overlook what happened in week 2. I mean, Marcus Mariota and the Tennessee Titans absolutely stomped all over the Jacksonville Jaguars in week 2 after basically being suffocated by the Raiders defense in week 1. And I was harsh on the Raiders going into the season defensively. I thought that basically they had one excellent player in Khalil Mack and then a bunch of other players that I did not believe were, significant blue-chip type players. I thought that I think a lot of people agree that Bruce Irvin is a solid player, but beyond that, not a lot of guys that strike fear into an opposing offense. But the Raiders have been so efficient so far and really impressed with what they've been able to do. They've already won one difficult road game. I wonder if they can take care of business on Sunday night. If we start looking at them as the class of the NFL, if they can improve to 3-0, with 2 of those wins being on the road in the East Coast.
Yeah.
All right, guys. I guess, what is Nashville, by the way? Is Nashville Central Time Zone?
I think so,
Yes, I think it is.
Okay. My bad.
Bills, they're one play away from also being a 2-0 team, but Zay Jones unfortunately can't come up with the grab. But Buffalo's look better than we thought. Could they be competitive this Sunday and maybe even pull off the upset against the Denver Broncos?
I think they'll be competitive, but because basically their strength matches up with Denver's strength, right? Or I'd say their strength matches up, I should say. I mean, the Bills defensively have been very good so far, and you knew they were going to be really well coached with Sean McDermott. You knew that there were some talent in place from previous regimes, but they've been fairly steady in the secondary, which I was a little bit concerned about given the inexperience at cornerback for the most part. I just don't know if they have the offense. I mean, listen, it's tough for any offense to hold its ground against the Denver Broncos, perhaps the best defense in football. But I don't know that the Bills, can get much going against this Denver Broncos defense, especially if left tackle Cordy Glenn is unable to play. He's dealing with an injury right now. So I feel like Denver probably takes care of business, but I'm looking forward to it. I think the Bills have been this nice blend of acquiring future capital in the draft for assets and to build the depth of this team going forward, but also being competitive enough this year that, you might win, who knows? I mean, 6, 7, 8, maybe 6 or somewhere in that range number of games.
Fantasy football now, some of the players that are sitting out there in leagues, waiver wire moves that can help us win matchups in week 3.
Yeah, I think that Buck Allen's still a player that needs to be more significantly owned. I got to be honest with you guys. Normally what I do is I write the waiver column, Sunday night and Monday morning, and at that point I have a really good feel for what players' ownership percentage is. But I'm just pulling up the added over the past 7 days, and I see that Buck Allen is now up to 30% owned, which still qualifies him for next week's waiver wire column. So he's a player that definitely needs to be added. If Rob Kelly does not play, I think Samaje Perine is a player that needs to be added. He is the presumptive starter running back for Washington. If Kelly sits this week, and then I wouldn't be surprised if the Dolphins' defense really shows well against this Jets offense that we talked about has been a little bit better than expected, but in fantasy football, one of the really harrowing tasks for your defense is to see an offense that has a bunch of firepower because, you can lose points if you give up 35 points, at least for fantasy football. I don't think the Jets are going to put up 35 against the Dolphins, so that will be a good streaming defense for this week.
Field Yates with us right now, 104.5 The Team. You do the fantasy-focused football podcast. Matthew Berry's Sell High. I think I have every single player on there. How scared should I be?
Oh, God. Like, something? I think I saw some blowback this morning because I tweeted about C.J. Anderson, who I believe was one of Matthew's sell-high candidates right now. Something? Here's the reality. Matthew does everything Matthew says and analyzes is done with good reason. At the same time, I think he would admit as well that, selling high, there's projection involved. So it could be that some of these players that have been hot stay red hot. So I don't want to throw I don't want you to wave the white flag as of yet. I think you're going to be just fine. I mean, heck, if you're 2-0, that's a good thing. At least you've built yourself a little bit of a cushion. So if things do go haywire, you're in a good shape.
Field Yates says Levack's fantasy football team's in good shape, and I can play for the New York Giants. That's a great interview in my mind.
You can come on anytime you want, Field.
Hey, listen, every Thursday works for me. How about that?
I like it. Field Yates, of course, all over ESPN, the Fantasy Focused Football Podcast, and a whole lot more, man. We really appreciate your time.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.